First-time poster, long-time reader, I felt obliged to tell you all my story. As I've been reading the stories, I've noticed that a common theme among many of them is the narrator's strong desire to make their story seem real. Some appear to take great pleasure in their unearthly encounter. There is a lot of energy and anticipation in the stories. To begin, let me state that for my mother, my sister, and myself, the exact opposite is true. Because of something that happened to me when I was around 24, we have only ever discussed it once. Let's call it the incident. I opened a can of worms for everyone when I told my family about it after it happened. After all, the tragedy took place in the house where we grew up. Even now, my parents still reside there. When I'm at home on leave, I still sleep in the old bedroom, which is where most of these stories start. All of us would rather forget the stories we have gathered and move on, praying that we don't add any more to our unsaid repertoire. After all, who wants to believe that their home is haunted? Things that are dead are dead. They remain deceased. In the earth, we never discuss it. Actually, we have a practice of ignoring the topic. Nevertheless, we all revealed the information in hushed tones over a bottle of wine on a chilly November evening. It began uncomfortably. Usually my family just gets wasted and laughs about farts. At 24, a tidal wave of old memories had just lately returned to me, and I was still a little unsettled by the entire experience. I had improved. This sit-down was recommended by my mom after I had screamed like a crazy person and crashed out of my room the previous evening. I was on the other side of my bedroom door, flinging myself against it until the frame splintered and the door finally opened, dumping me onto the floor, while my family was all gathered in the hallway for a few scary seconds after 2 a.m. My sister and mother had both been frightened by something I had said. Something was fucking dragging itself in there. What I detest most about this story is that dragging tone. I detest having to recall that sound. Since it was just a year ago, the recollection is still somewhat vivid, yet I still wish I could forget it. Thus, the following day, my mother and my apprehensive sister, let's call her Liz, were reciting our own original ghost stories. Mom got things started. Our home was typical of older suburban homes. With the exception of ours being painted the most repulsive shade of brown, it appeared to be just like every other house in the neighborhood. However, it was located in a nice town with decent schools, or whatever it is that drives parents to relocate to dull suburban areas. Fortunately, this was before homes were surrounded by woods and yards. I adore my dad, but he's a flake when it comes to small undertakings. He had lauded the house as a fixer-upper and added it to his list of unfinished projects. When my mother saw that it was the only affordable home in a good neighborhood, she eventually gave in. However, Mom never wanted the house. She had never been fond of the prior owner for some reason. She was a woman who loved dolls and was in her early 60s. We'll just assume that she had an excessive interest in dolls. She kept them in the dining room and living room cabinets. They all wore their hair in pigtails and had brown hair. This was the final straw for us all, even though I didn't like dolls in the first place because of a bad experience with a Chucky doll, a locked closet, and a cruel second cousin when I was 4 years old. Those dolls didn't appeal to us. We didn't. They gazed with lifeless eyes out from behind their glass walls. We never really questioned why a woman would collect dolls with dark hair, and even while I now have some theories, I haven't cared to look into it. I won't. With the doll museum safely gone, we moved into our cheerful new house. The world was in harmony. Due to a recent promotion, my mom was feeling quite happy. We kids were forming friendships, and my dad had already begun and stopped 3 other projects: repainting the kitchen, building a deck, and gardening. Even the somewhat stinging sensation she had experienced while she was alone in the house had disappeared. until November again. According to my mom, she simply got afraid while washing laundry in the basement at night. It was a spooky, unfinished basement, full of cobwebs, yet it had never happened before. Nobody enjoyed staying down there long enough to pull them all out. However, it wasn't as though we were inherently hostile to the location. All it was a spooky basement. Many basements are inherently eerie. However, my mother suddenly found it intolerable to spend any more time in there that evening. According to her account, she quickly set the basket of dried clothing on top of the dryer and headed for the stairs. 4 light bulbs, one at each corner, illuminated the basement. As she descended beneath the light bulb at the bottom of the basement stairs, all 4 of them went out, leaving her in complete darkness. This threatened to push her over the edge for 3 reasons. 1, at the moment, she was alone herself at home. 2, the door at the top of the steps was closed, leaving her completely in the dark. The door was always left open by her. Thus, in complete darkness, my frightened mother ascended our groaning basement stairs, making excuses all the way up the stairs. Perhaps there was a draft. Perhaps she had shut it after herself, or perhaps the dog had knocked it shut. She halted about halfway up the stairs because she believed she heard something. She claimed to be able to hear her blood pulsing through her brain since she was paying so close attention. She had begun to weep silently, and that initial rush of horror had never gone away. She waited for a while, though, before making another move. At last, she ascended the stairs once more, and as soon as she did, something dropped to the ground. She ran away. She tried the door after sprinting to the top of the stairs. All she replied was, "And I just couldn't open it." She claims to have heard something dragging over the clatter of her fumbling with the doorknob. She didn't ever pause to hear. All she can recall is the sound of dragging. According to her, it felt like a wet sack pulling itself over our basement cement floor. Sometimes it sounded like something striking the floor twice and then dragging again, and other times it would move very slowly and slowly. Once it began, the sound continued completely. I swear I felt the steps tremble a little when something slapped them, and my mother was feverishly adjusting the doorknob. She claimed to know that there was something at the bottom of the stairs. When he heard her frantically banging and turning the knob, my dad hurried to the door and opened it for her. Without turning around, she hurried into his arms and kicked the door shut. She sealed the door, and she still only goes down there during the day without my father at her side. When Mom concluded her narrative, Liz, Mom, and I poured another glass of wine. We had only just begun, and it seemed like the night would last forever. Liz and I were looking at one another while contemplating the noise my mother had mentioned. For those brief seconds, Mom remained silent. Liz and I both thought the same thing. We both had the same impression of what Mom had described. The hands. The slapping had been just that. Its body was dragged across the cellar toward our mother by hands hitting the floor, whatever it was. Although it's late here and I have a long day tomorrow, I thought I would be willing to post the entire thing. I'll write what my sister stated and conclude with my personal experiences if anyone wants to hear the rest. Writing these things down is nearly satisfying. Next was my sister, the sensible one. She was the one who woke me up during my brief tarot card period and informed me bluntly those things are pointless. She doesn't think about the paranormal. Her career and her family make up her entire universe. She is quite brave in addition to being realistic. Very courageous. Let's jump over this ravine. Kind of old-fashioned bravery. She simply isn't easily frightened. Therefore, it made my mother and I uneasy to hear her become a little worked up over this. All right, to start, I'm not claiming that any of this actually occurred. It could have been a dream. However, this is what I recall. She then fearlessly drained half of her glass of wine in a single go and began. My sister was a little upset just after I departed to enlist in the military. During our early years, we had never been apart and had always been close. Like many New Englanders, she had a very poor understanding of the military and thought I would be in the desert, being fired at every day from the time I left basic training until the end of time. She thus slept in my room for a week. After a week, she gave up due to what she witnessed in November 2008. She claimed that the night had been bitterly cold and that the wind had been howling through our yard's dead limbs, causing them to clatter like bones. She claimed that it appeared as though someone had turned off all the lights in the world because the moon was totally hidden. She could feel the chill creeping in through the walls, and the night seemed ominous. That's what she thought when she went to sleep. A little after 1 in the morning, she awoke. She told us both that she could remember experiencing a similar sense of dread that she had never experienced before. I nearly remember what she said. I was just really afraid when I woke up. I felt like something was watching me, and if I opened my eyes, I would be acknowledging it, or something, and it would get me, so I didn't. She was so certain that there was a face inches from hers, and that if she opened it, she would be staring into its eyes or into its wide, needle-toothed mouth. That she lay there with her eyes pressed shut and the cover up around her face. That was just the idea she received from her infantile fear. She didn't see anything like that. She simply lay motionless, telling herself to get up. She claimed that her waning, reasonable internal monologue was fiercely battling her impulse to flee. Nothing is there. For whatever reason you're afraid of the dark, you will notice that there is nothing there if you simply open your eyes. However, she was unable to. Despite her innate sense warning her that it was there and that seeing it would mean certain death, she was going crazy, persuading herself that there was nothing there. She was going crazy, persuading herself that there was nothing there. At last, she opened her eyes for a single moment, then shut them once more. The door of your closet was open. She looked at me and remarked, "That was all I saw at the time." But we all know that nobody ever opens that closet door. It's absolutely true. That closet is empty, and none of us enter it. We never gave it any thought. All of this can be explained by quite commonplace events. I hadn't been neat as a teenager, and I didn't have enough clothing or anything else to justify filling it. Nevertheless, the practice of keeping nothing in that closet has continued. On the floor of my former bedroom are boxes of vintage Christmas decorations. I have old board games, old plush animals, and novels that no one ever reads on my bookshelf. Even though my mother is a crusader who uses a toilet brush to meticulously clean the rest of our house, my room has turned into a total mess. No one feels really at ease in the closet. It's nothing really noteworthy. A sliding door made of inexpensive wood opens it. It's painted white inside. A child's play table, painted a faded pink, is the only object occupying the space. We had never moved the table, which had been there with the home. The whole family was uneasy about it, just like the closet. Although having a doll-sized broken table in my closet was a little unsettling, the table itself wasn't the source of our anxiety. The small discolored door was the culprit. The small discolored door isn't a door at all. Though all that's left is a frame enclosing a plain piece of drywall painted the same harsh white as the rest of the closet, we believe it may have been at one point. The paint job, though, was shoddy. Inside the pointless little frame, the drywall was immaculate. In actuality, it appears more recent than the surrounding wall. On the small frame, however, tiny patterns are visible through the paint. Beneath the brushstrokes, which appear almost aggressively rushed, as if whomever painted over those infantile scrawls hadn't wanted to be in there either, childish renditions of flowers, sunbeams, and rainbows are barely discernible. Additionally, the top part of the frame and the wall above it were stained. It's not blood that's stained. That will be my first point. The wall beneath the fresh paint has no bloody smudges. In fact, the stain appears nearly hazy. In dozens of little strokes, it turns from a dusky brown to an ashen gray. It appears to have been burned, according to the family as a whole. We're not sure because we've never heard of a fire in our home, but we do know that it appears to be a large scorch mark, that the frame appears to have been a small door that was covered up, and that there are undoubtedly about 10 square feet missing from the second floor, between that closet and the stairs. Our family has an unwritten rule that we don't like that small door or the closet it hides in. As a result, the closet door is never open. Please try to imagine my sister's extreme fear when I recall you that she unexpectedly found herself facing a small, dark opening that led to my closet. Her current situation was worse than the one she had been in prior to opening her eyes. She now pictured something glaring out at her from within the closet, rather than a face looming directly in front of her. She seemed unable to close her eyes after that. My eyelids appeared to be transparent. Even though I was aware that my eyes were still closed, I was able to visualize the closet with such clarity that it seemed as though my eyes were open and the small door, wherever it was open. Please remember that my sister had only seen the open closet door at this time and nothing else. She suddenly had a very distinct mental image. But she had had enough and was going to force herself to get out of bed so she could flee my room and sleep downstairs with the lights on. Then she noticed something. Was there anyone with a metronome? I'm referring to those vintage wooden ones that resembled pyramids and had a small weight that you could slide up or down a small metal rod to adjust the pace. For me to adequately explain this to you, you'll need to visualize it. Just like that. Someone was swaying at the foot of the bed and back and forth at an unachievable pace. According to her, the figure at the foot of the bed rocked back and forth on its feet while maintaining perfect rigidity, as if it were the small pole on the metronome. But it was definitely there. It was so dark that she could hardly see it. A metronome-like figure swinging back and forth on its feet. Back and forth. There was complete silence, just a face that my sister couldn't see, being stared at. According to her, it was dressed in a dress and had long, dark, untidy hair. It resembled a church gown or something similar. It was splotchy and filthy. But it was either pale blue or white. Stretched to unthinkable proportions, it resembled a girl. It loomed over my sister like a twisted, rocking tower, its arms long and impossible to fathom, squeezed at its tight sides. She said, like a little girl, but stretched out like silly putty or something. It dropped after it ceased to rock. My sister sat up in bed and stared at it in terror. Though she was too afraid to move, she was left alone in the dimly lit room, confident that she wasn't alone. Yet. From the corner of her eye, it appeared as though the closet was open, but she claims she didn't check. The dragging was then heard by her. She must have been horrified. She heard the dragging after seeing the long object at the foot of her bed slump to the ground silently and start ticking. That terrible dragging noise. But it wasn't the foot of the bed that was dragging. The closet was the source of it. For my sister, whatever was at the foot of the bed had seemed more spectral. She had believed she could see right through the haggard girl thing. There was weight behind whatever was moving in the closet. Substance. My sister didn't pay attention. She never checked to make sure the closet was completely open. She simply ran. On her way down the stairs, she flipped on all the lights as she hurried out of the chamber, which at this point had no door. She spent the following week or so sleeping at a friend's place and hadn't mentioned it to anyone until our night. 3 years later, another November. After my brief encounter the previous evening, it was my turn to pour more wine. You know, shockingly, this isn't making me feel better about this whole thing. We were all a little uncomfortable talking about a supposedly spirit that lived in our house, because it was becoming late in the evening, and the only thing keeping us from complete darkness was our weak kitchen light. Jesus, I didn't hear you enter at all as I put my computer down, I say. He could see I was staring at my computer as he entered because our apartment's door leads directly into our living room, and the couch I'm resting on faces away from the door. He chuckles and asks, "I didn't scare you too bad, did I? I assumed you were reading spooky stories up here, since I saw all the lights were out. It's unbelievable that you didn't hear me approach the stairs." A smug smirk covers his face as he looks at me, knowing that he has me. "Nah," I sarcastically exclaim. "I was just taken aback by you. I suppose I was simply engrossed in this tale." Tim gives me another smirk as I reach over and turn on the lamp on the end table. Then I approach him and give him a kiss. I add, "You're home late." As I glance at the 3:23 a.m. clock, it wasn't unusual for Tim and I to be home at strange hours because we both work at a neighborhood bar. I wait tables and he serves drinks. However, an explanation was necessary over an hour and a half after the bar closed. Yes, it was simply really busy. 2 large parties arrived at around 12:30 and stayed for a very long time. One involved a bachelorette party, while the other involved a group of men who ultimately attempted to have sex with the bachelorette party. Slumping into the couch, he murmurs, "It got pretty trashy." I place my head on his shoulder as I sit down beside him. Then, when I was biking home, some asshole pulled out in front of me, so I swerved and hit the curb. "What a dick," I say, sitting up straight and looking at him with a worried expression. I look all over his body to make sure there aren't any scratches or scuffs that I missed in the dark when he first entered. It appeared that he was uninjured. Yes, I also popped my front tube. I was forced to walk the remainder of the way home. He goes on, and amazingly, I didn't fall off. It just popped when I struck the curb with enough force. I'm hoping I didn't bend the rim. "Well, it sounds like you had a pretty eventful night," I add, giving him a shoulder rub. Did scaring me help make it better, at least?" I ask after laughing. "Yeah, that was definitely the highlight," he replies with another laugh. "In any case, what were you reading?" "It was part 4 of like a 1,000,000-part series on no sleep," I respond. "Oh, geez. I assume that means you're not coming to bed until you finish reading all of it." "You're going to bed already?" I sulk at him. "Yes. In order to obtain a new tube before work, I have to wake up early. To check if my wheel needs to be trued, I'm hoping Shane will be present." "Fine," I reply in a tone of feigned disappointment. To brush his teeth, he leaves the couch and goes to the bathroom. Removing my laptop off the table, I attempt to locate my position inside the text. "Remember," he says as he leaves, "the call is coming from inside the house." I love horror, and so does Tim. Beginning as young boys who enjoyed Halloween and Goosebumps, we grew up to be teenagers who watched every horror film available. When we first met, it was one of the things that brought us together. The Exorcism of Emily Rose was released at midnight on our first date and on our second anniversary. We went to Hollywood to see the Museum of Death. Once a month, we still go out on a date night to watch a horror film, whether it's new or old. We put on our best over-the-top creepy accent and repeat our favorite cliche, "The call is coming from inside the house," to diffuse the tension because we watch and read so much horror. As I read on, I notice the light in my peripheral vision go out and hear the bathroom water cease. Then Tim leaves the house in his panties and makes a beeline for the bedroom. "Good night, Johnny," he calls, glancing around the doorframe. "Night," I murmur, looking up. He gives me a smile and a head shake before shutting off the light. I continue reading till I reach the 7th section of this specific tale. Even though none of the sections were really lengthy, there was still a significant amount of reading. My eyes hurt and my shoulders are stiff from sitting there for what seems like hours. I close my laptop and find myself in complete darkness after deciding it was enough for one night and that it was time to go to bed. "Haha, that's odd," I thought to myself as my eyes attempt to adapt to this newfound absence of light. It must be almost daytime now. Although we have very thick drapes to block out the glare from the TV when we're playing video games or watching movies, some light still manages to get in around the corners. After spending so much time in one position, my legs start to tingle a little, so I get up from the couch and move to the window. Ouch! I slam my shin against the coffee table and yell. I stoop to feel the table where I slapped it for a moment before moving on to the curtain. As I moved, my eyes adapt a bit more, and I can make out the curtain's outline. Pulling them back, I stood there astonished. It was utter darkness outside. Not even the other buildings or the lamps were on. Living in the city, this was something I wasn't used to. There's always illumination of some kind. I looked out the window while cupping my hands. Even the neighboring buildings are hardly visible. I tried to turn on the table lamp again by reaching over, but it merely clicked and remained dark. I didn't recall any storm, but there must have been a power outage. I lift up the window after unlocking it. I hear no rain when I listen. I look up, sticking my head through the glass. Tonight, the stars were the only source of light because there was no moon. However, it appeared that even the stars were beaming through some kind of cloud cover. Although there were some clouds, they were dark, but not many. Although it hadn't started to rain yet, it was undoubtedly coming. I chuckled to myself, "Oh great! It was a stormy and dark night." It shouldn't be night though. It's been too long since I started reading for it to still be nighttime. Had I? Was I simply reading the stories more quickly than I had anticipated because I was getting into them? I returned to my computer and raised the top. I swiftly moved the course to the sidebar to check the time by swiping my finger across the trackpad, because the screen instantly dims when it is not plugged in. I exclaim, "What the fuck?" out loud. The time on the clock is 3:33 a.m. It couldn't have been just 10 minutes. Since Tim had returned home, I had read 3 more stories. In 10 minutes, how could I have read them all? It was simply not feasible. There is no sense of darkness in any of this. I hear the computer power down as the screen goes blank. My shoddy laptop is enabled to retain a charge while the power is gone. Tim would still be awake if it had only been 10 minutes, but this was all becoming too strange. I almost run toward the bedroom. "Tim, what the hell is going—" Tim wasn't present. No, ever since my laptop died, my eyes simply haven't adapted. I removed the bed's blanket. Actually, Tim wasn't present. Tim, where the fuck is? He was present. He wished me a nice night. The clock indicates that it simply occurred. What's happening? My thoughts were racing. I had to locate Tim. Most likely he's in the restroom. Simply put, you didn't witness him enter. I sprinted over and grabbed the handle of the restroom door. There was a lock on the door. I queried the closed door. "Tim?" No response. I say, "Hey, Tim," a bit louder. Nothing has changed. I shout, "Tim!" and give the door a single whack. Nothing. "Tim, stop messing with me. Open the damn door. What the fuck?" I tug at the door and twist the handle as I spit out. The force of something slamming into the restroom door from the opposite side knocks me to the ground. I take a seat, merely gaping in shock. This was different from Tim. He wouldn't frighten me this much. In the event that it is not Tim who is in the restroom, I take a seat. I'm still not entirely convinced by what transpired, merely anticipating what will happen next. However, there isn't another explosion. There was no sound coming from the other side of the door. My backpack is perched over the side of the couch when I look to my side. I take out my mag light and slide over to it. I tiptoe back to the door after carefully getting to my feet. Slowly, I reach down to the door handle while holding the large flashlight above my head. I'm quite happy that Tim persuaded me to pack this bulky flashlight. Getting home from work so late, you never know who might be out there, and a mag light isn't really a weapon, he remarked. Although I have never been mugged, I am really happy that I now know where it is. The handle turns. It is no longer locked. I turn the handle slowly till the door clicks. I then listen and wait. There is nothing to hear. I continue to listen, trying to hear anything coming from the restroom. I almost shit myself when I hear a piano suddenly from behind me. The Exorcist theme music is playing on my phone. With both eyes on the restroom door, I release the handle and head back up to my luggage. I take out my phone from inside my backpack. I don't recognize the number, and who would be phoning at this hour? Tim must be the one. Tim must be the one. Hello? I say. Oh, the phone is not answering. There is only a faint background static sound. This time, there is still no voice on the other end, but my answer is a buzzer informing me that I have a new notification. Is that you, Tim? Hello? Thank God, I say aloud. I can hear him on the phone, therefore it must be a lousy reception. I hang up the phone and open my text messaging app. It brings up our discussion. The call originates from within the house. No. At 3:33 a.m., I respond to his text. Don't even mess with me at this moment. 3:33 a.m. The theme is Exorcist. My phones are ringing. The number is the same. I move the button to the side that says ignore. Where are you? I text him at 3:33 a.m. What the devil is happening? Why is 3:33 still the time? I yell into my empty dark flat. The theme is Exorcist, the same figure. The call originates from within the house, 3:33 a.m. I begin to cry. Even though I don't cry readily, this is really getting to me. My phone's screen turns off when I remove the battery. Light is what I need. I press the mag lights button, but nothing happens. No, you can't have dead batteries. I keep clicking, but the light doesn't come on. The theme is Exorcist. The call originates from within the house, 3:33 a.m. No! I cry. That isn't feasible. I remove the battery. I crush the phone's screen. After shining the flashlight down on it, the theme continues to play. Once more, I bash it. That legendary piano from a horror film is still there. I keep smashing it until it stops at last. I simply look down at it, waiting for another ring to frighten me. At that moment, the light turns on and the front door swings open. I raise my hand to protect my eyes from the abrupt shift. Tim exclaims, "Hey, I'm home," as he enters the room. "What are you doing on the floor?" He notices my tear-streaked face and red eyes at that point. "What's wrong, Johnny? Has something occurred?" Tim comes running over to me and throws his arms around me as soon as I just drop my head and begin to cry. "John, what's going on? Are you all right?" "Keep quiet. It's all right. I'm present." I say, "The call came from inside the house," in between sobbing. Tim asks, "What are you talking about? What's the call? Was there a break-in? Do you have your mag light for that reason?" He sits next to me and begins looking about the apartment for evidence of theft. After calming myself, I say, "No, the call. Additionally, I believe someone was in our restroom." I speak more softly. "I think they might still be in there." After taking his bike lock out of his back pocket, Tim gets to his feet. He grips the U-lock as he moves stealthily to the bathroom door. Grabbing the handle, he tears open the bathroom door.